Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. A little after 11 a.m. We'll get started, see if we have any questions. On yesterday, after fielding some questions, Pastor led the discussion talking about the Exodus and talking about an allegory and looking at it from that perspective. And we had a discussion on that. And that primarily led what we discussed on yesterday. I'm terrible with details. But I'll ask if there anyone that has a question on anything that was discussed yesterday, or do you have something that you may have seen that grabs your attention?
Hey, good
Questions,
morning,
comment.
everyone. Reb, you made a statement yesterday that if you could give a European $10 billion or $10 million to have the experience and the skin color of an African, and you stated that no one ever answered the question, or no one ever said yes. And I've heard that on this about the second or third time I've heard it. No one ever said, yeah, I switch. Yet the part that scares me about that, Reverend Richard, is, well, number one, the good part about it is money ain't everything. Yet the part that kind of scares me about it is how many African Americans in my era would switch places, would leave their rightful position to have the pigment of the Caucasian. And that's the part that just scares me, because I even ask my own self that at times. Hey, George, if you was white, no, you wouldn't meet this kind of resistance. And yes, there are some African Americans in my era, 50 to 53, 50 to 55, that they possess a European maneuverability. Their mindset is European. So that's all I had to say. But that's the part, Reverend Richard, that really intrigues me, is that there are some African Americans out here that they do have the mindset. I being one of them. Yeah, that's something I got to chisel at. And just this whole aspect about money.
Okay.
And how. Go ahead, my bad. Go ahead. Thank you, Rev.
I got you. First of all, there are a large number of Africans who would embrace having the skin color of Caucasians. And it has nothing to do with your generation or mine. That's just the way it is, and that's the way it has been for quite some time. And there are a number of Africans who have skin has been so pale until they pass as white. So that's nothing new. As far as having the mindset, a European mindset, all of us have a European mindset, or at least had it, and we're beginning to work on it, because all of us received a Western education. So that mindset is there. And there are things about the African mindset that is extremely difficult for us to wrap our minds around because of the way we think. And as I said yesterday, there's a difference between a Caucasian and a European mindset. So when we talk about the European, we're talking about a mindset. When we talk about a Caucasian, we're talking about someone who calls himself white. When we talk about an African, we're talking about someone who calls himself black. And if you not notice, regardless of who the African is intimate with, the offspring is always called African. It doesn't matter where it is, the Caucasian or Japanese, it doesn't matter. It's always called African. Anything that, anyone rather, who has African seed or came from an African womb, it's an African. Or came from a womb, yeah, African womb is African. It does not matter who it is or what quote unquote race that they were intimate with. George?
Oh, my bad. Well, Rev, I agree with what you're saying. It's just this aspect of money that my homeboy called me up and he stated to me that George, I'm about to meet with someone, and I just told him, do not let that dude know how much money you make, because you won't get nothing out of it. You're gonna have to portray yourself like you don't know anything. So it's just that whole aspect of money, just the perks and advantages, Reverend Richard, of being poor.
I got you.
Do more things with your heart. You understand reciprocity. You understand law and order, structure. Now, Reverend Richard, into the group. The one thing that I do admire about the European culture, when it's done beautiful, they have an appreciation for masculinity or masculine energy.
Yeah.
Whereas in my culture, it is the female. If you talk to an affluent European male, you say something about his daddy, he'll kill you. Just like in our culture, you say something about our mama, we'll kill you. So when it's done beautiful, Reverend Richard, not by dominating and being superior, when it's done beautiful, the European culture has an appreciation more for masculine energy than for feminine energy.
That's why we're in trouble. Wait a minute, George. You said that, and I want to address that. I want to address the money issue and the masculine issue. First of all, the European mindset has no respect for feminine energy. That doesn't mean Caucasians don't. The European mindset venerates masculine energy. And the reason we are in the predicament that we are now in terms of war, brutality, whatever you want to call it, murder, slavery, all it, rape, all of it. The reason we are in this mindset now is because of that European male mindset. Now there are Caucasians who will not buy into that mindset, or at least they try not to anyway. But like I said, all of us have a European-centered education, so we do think that way. Now, there's nothing beautiful about European masculinity at all. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. European masculinity is the reason that you can have 24,000 plus people killed in Gaza, with 75% of them being women and children. And Biden says nothing other than, you need to stop. Come on now, are you gonna stop? Please stop. That's all, that's it. Because of that European mindset when it comes to masculinity. You will never find a European mindset that says that where masculinity brings peace. You will never find that. The European mindset says that Hamas is a terrorist group and they are murderers. Russia has done far more to Ukraine than Hamas did to Israel. And yet, Russia is not a terrorist nation. And so what's the difference? To be honest with you, Israel has done far more to Hamas than Hamas could ever do to Israel. And I'm not just talking about in this conflict. I'm talking about the things that led up to this conflict. So there is nothing beautiful about male, European masculinity, nothing. Now the money, unless you want to speak to the European masculinity before I talk about money.
Well,
Okay.
Reb, I will ask, is that the view of everyone on the phone? I respect your view. Yet to the other participants on the phone, do you all share that view with Reverend Richard? And if you don't share the view with Reverend Richard, if you could kind of like step forward, I just respect that, his answer. Yet is that, are we good?
George, that's not my opinion, that's history.
I can help with that, I think. I think, George, what you're talking about, the for beautiful masculinity, that's not European masculinity. Because that's just masculinity, when it is sort of balanced and in harmony with itself and its environment. The distinction in European masculinity is specifically the extremes that they take essentially in that direction, which results in the extremely destructive behavior and attitudes that they show towards everyone that is not them. So I think we're making a distinction between what is characteristic about the European form of masculinity, quote unquote, versus masculinity in a more universal sense. It is, of course, possible for individuals, white, black, whatever race that they are, to be more harmonious than other individuals. But in terms of the overall mindset that dominates a particular group of people, European masculinity is has shown itself to be nothing but destructive, as long as it has been distinguished from other groups of people. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, got you. I got you now, boss. Thank you for bringing me to a better understanding. Appreciate you, cuz.
You're welcome, George. Thank you.
There's a part of this, the strength of this, this conversation is reminds me of George talks about his era. You know, back when I was a kid, and I can't remember who did this study, but they would bring dolls to Black children and see how many of them would choose the white doll as being the more beautiful doll. This is something that is being instilled in us, and as Pastor said, it's you know, part of the culture, it's part of how we've been trained, how we've been raised, and being less than, and the power, the strength of the slave ship, knowing that you are a former, come from former slaves, automatically puts you at a disadvantage. It makes you feel inferior, and that you're less than if you don't know the history or try to see your way clear of that. So this strength, this hold that we're talking about, changing skin color and whatnot, that the African would do so. It's been that way for a very long time. And part of what we are doing, we talk about the macro and not only educating ourselves, but hopefully freeing everyone, giving everyone an opportunity to take a better look at who we are and the what am I trying to say? The spiritual energy that we bring to the table. So I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it does. The education that we have received, I need to clarify that maybe. And the reason I say I think I need to clarify it is because when we say that we have a European education, our minds go to education in public school settings. The deepest, the um, most effective indoctrination that we've had came from the church, and it's still the same. And it was not done overtly. It was done in a very subtle manner.
Pastor, would you please say that again? Came from the what?
Religion,
Okay, okay.
religion. If you want to get in an argument with someone who's of African descent, go tell them that Jesus was black. It doesn't matter what color Jesus was. Color ain't important. But if it's not important, then why are all the heroes white? That's a subliminal. It has a subliminal effect on people, especially children. That's why the white dog was chosen over the black dog. You talk with people from other parts of the world, and they will tell you that one of the reasons they're uncomfortable around people of African descent is because of what they've been indoctrinated with. And that is all of us are thugs. We are drug dealers and murderers and rapists. That's all you see on TV about us. And we embrace that. One of the things we don't look into what we do. For example, I read, and did I read it? No, I listened at a video, and on that video, I can't remember the guy's name. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. He said that the black people are the ones who grew Fox News. We, as African people, are the ones who made Fox successful. Because when Fox first started, they had all these black shows on there. And we ran to those shows, and the revenue from the ads grew exponentially. And when Fox got enough money, what they did, they made a bid to the NFL, and that's how Fox got football game from CBS. And as they say, the rest is history. And with that money, the revenue that they were receiving, they were able to launch Fox News. And after that, all the black shows disappeared. They didn't need us anymore. Now, fast forward to now, the same thing is happening with Tubi. The guy in the video was talking about this same thing is happening with Tubi right now. Rupert Murdoch owns Tubi, and he's making an effort to build a news outlet, just like he did with Fox News. And guess what? Black folk are flocking to Tubi because he has programming that's geared towards us. And we don't realize that we are the architects of our suffering, or the architects of the programs that seeks to dehumanize us. We have been taught to accept whatever is offered if it looks like us or if it sounds like us. And that is because we are so desperate for something positive about us until we will swallow anything, hook, line, and sinker. So there's no way in the world that I will ever get Tubi. That's a streaming I would never be a subscriber of because of that. So our education comes from the school system, the church, TV, etc. And when you consider that the European mindset is the mindset that dominates TV programming, that dominates Christianity, that dominates news outlets, that dominates the governmental indoctrination, that dominates the school books that are written. That European mindset dominates all of that. And it is impossible to be in America, educated in America, and not be a racist. And that goes for us also, because of how we treat each other. We are getting to a place now where we're beginning to see what's been detrimental to us. And as we are able to see that, we are taking a different course. And the course that we are taking is one that is inclusive of everyone without any desire to dominate anyone. Our desires are for humanity to be in harmony. And that harmony cannot exist if we don't re-educate ourselves and begin to move away from the indoctrination that we have received. Our Creator brought us into this earth for a reason, and it was not to be indoctrinated by anyone. Our Creator brought us into this earth for us as humanity to live in harmony together. However, the European mindset changed all of that. Now, I do believe that the European mindset that Nick and I were talking about earlier was purposely allowed to be in place. I believe that. I believe that the Creator did that. Why? Because in order for us to become God, to be Elohim, we must create something in our image and likeness. And the mindset of the image and likeness that we must create in is a mindset of loving kindness, a mindset of forgiveness, a mindset that is filled with empathy, regardless of who it is. And that's our desire, to have that type of mindset that is devoid of anything that seeks to dominate, humiliate, and destroy humanity. So that's where we are now, and that's part of what I drew from the gleaned rather from the video that I watched. Thank you. Oh, money.
Pastor Jay,
Go ahead.
what you're talking about was on, I saw it on Roland Martin on
Yes.
YouTube. I don't know if that's who you were talking about, this black guy that was talking about Fox and Tubi.
That's him. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Roland Martin. You're welcome.
When it comes to the issue of money, to people of African descent in particular, money is a carrot and a stick. A carrot on a stick. When we look at money, there is just enough money in the African community, whether it is in America or in the diaspora, to keep us moving, hoping and believing that we are going to be able to be, quote unquote, successful like white people. That's not going to happen. In 1860, 1/2 of 1% of, in the 1860s, after the end of the Civil War and up to Reconstruction, 1/2 or 1% of the whole economy in this country was controlled by African people. Think about this. You got $1 trillion economy, and 1/2 of 1% of it is owned by Africans. The rest of it is Caucasians or Europeans. And to this day, worldwide, that is the same formula that exists. No matter how well you think you're doing, there are more people doing worse than you could ever dream of. 1/2 of 1% of $350 or $400 trillion worldwide is in the hands of people of African descent. That does not speak of people of color. It speaks of people of African descent. So whenever you allow money to be the decision maker in your life, then you're a fool. Because money is fool's gold. When my children were negotiating for salaries, when they were interviewed by corporations, I always told them, regardless of what they offer you, take the money off the table and see what's left, and make your decision based on what's left. And because if you focus on the money, as those who are interviewing you hope you will do, if you focus on the money, you have just submitted yourself to a type of manipulation that's that will eventually destroy you, because that money will take your dignity. That money will cause you to work hours that will keep you away from your family. They're chasing the dollar will destroy you. And I have no qualms with someone having money. That's not the question at all. But it's how we treat it. Money is a tool. Money is not a God. It's a tool. Money is not life. It is a tool. And this system of money came into existence, and the energy attached to it came into existence with the systems that were created by Europeans. And from that point forward, money has always been used to control people. And right now, there are people on this call who try to control their household by money, by controlling the money. There are men, especially, who seek to do that. I know a marriage that ended because the wife made more money than the man, and there was not being lorded over him. It was simply that he had been reared to believe that the man is supposed to make more money than the woman. That is ludicrous. But guess what? The money is what destroyed that relationship. So if you have an affection for money more so than you do for humanity, you have a serious mental problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Hey,
questions?
Reb. Hey, Reb, this is Charles. Who put that perception in a black man's mind?
The European mindset is what put that in our minds. And we could not help that because we were taught all of our books in school came from the mindset of the European. Education in America, especially now, after assimilation, others call it integration, but after assimilation, the mindset of the African was totally submitted to a European education. Prior to that, the mindset was guarded by those teachers who kept us focused on who we are, kept us focused on believing and holding on to our dignity, regardless of what was offered to us. My history teacher, Russ Adams, was born and reared in Charleston. And Russ Adams said that his mom was a part of the Brown Bag Society in Charleston. And his daddy could not be a part of that society because he was too dark. Where did that mindset come from? We were taught that you have to be twice as good to be accepted as being equal. And that was wrong, but I understand what was being said. I embraced what was being said. But think about this. You have to be twice as good to be considered equal. You could be 10 times as good and still not considered equal. When you are one who does the job better, you are going to be asked to train a Caucasian who does not know anything about the job, and that person will become your boss, your supervisor, your manager, whatever you want to call it. So this whole mindset is a racial mindset that has no human benefits at all, none. And we have to be very cautious of that, of how we approach this whole concept of money. I think it was Kathy who taught that for about a year, too, maybe, on the love of money is the root of all evil. And that, if you understand what that is saying, it did not say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of it. And when you understand what that's saying, then the attitude towards it will change if you desire to change. But nothing will change you if you don't have the desire to be changed. Yesterday, when we had the discussion about Exodus, it led us into a discussion about ancestors and the European mindset, etc. But the initial discussion was about the Bible, the Exodus not happening, that there was no such thing as slaves in Egypt. There was no such thing as Moses leading people out of slavery. That did not happen at all, because the Bible is an allegory. And from that foundation, it led us to the questions that we are answering now, or at the very least, making every effort to answer. Our responses are from that foundation. So I hope that helps you, Charles. Thank you.
It did. It did. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Charles.
morning. This is Kathy. Pastor, may I add something to what you were saying when you spoke of integration and assimilation?
Yes.
I was watching the news the other night, and they were interviewing someone from a state that's close to the border, and they were asking elderly Caucasian men and women what their thoughts were on the border. And the elderly Caucasian male was saying that he was concerned because a lot of the people at the border were men. And when they came into this country, you didn't know what those men were going to do. But when they interviewed one elderly lady, she said, it's just too many of them. And we will not have time to assimilate them. And they will bring their culture in with them and establish their culture. And we won't have an opportunity to change it once they come in with their culture and not assimilate to ours. Then there's nothing more we can do. That just shocked me that she said that out loud on the news. I know that's what they always have thought, and that's what they've always done. But I found that very interesting that she was comfortable enough to voice that out loud. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. And all of that comes from the quiet, what has been the quiet arrogance of a European mindset. Donald Trump has done more for people of color than anybody I can think of, because he said the quiet thing out loud. There were people of African descent in particular who felt like they could make it in this society and that they were equal to the people who control the society. And when you said to them that you are an African, they would fight you on that. They were ashamed to be called an African. And they were not ashamed to be called a nigger. But they were ashamed to be called an African. Donald Trump says in his words that all of you came from S-holes countries. All of you. He said to us that we are nothing, that we are supposed to be despised, and that we are in less than humans. Not in those words, but that's what he's saying when he talks about us. Now he has put us in a position where we are unable to deny the systemic racism in this country. And those who deny that it exists eventually have it thrown back in their face. Nikki Haley is one in particular. She denied that it exists, but yet a couple of days later, Donald Trump was calling her by her Indian name. And that is a dog whistle saying that she is one of the others. She's not one of us. As hard as she has tried to assimilate into the society of Caucasian, she has not been able to make it, even though she thought she had. And one of the worst people who is steeped in European thought, and it is Tim Scott. He is one of the most disgusting and one of the most repugnant people that I have ever seen embracing a man who sees him as being nothing, as being nothing at all, or the very best that he could ever be is to be a slave to him. But yet he embraced him the same way that the overseers of African descent embraced the master when they were told to catch the runaway slave. We see all of this. Donald Trump has exposed all of this, all of it. Nixon says, give them all these community programs and keep them quiet. He did not care any more about us than does Trump, but he kept it quiet, and he made it more difficult for us to show people what they really thought about us. But Donald Trump has made it evident. And when you look at the number of people who support him, when you look at the amicus brief that was filed to the Supreme Court in support of him being on the ballot, when you look at all of those things, you will see that the people who are supporting him cannot possibly care about you. We are not to be angry about that. We are to be informed about it, because we are just like the Exodus. It is said that Moses was raised in the house of Pharaoh, and he knew the ways of Pharaoh. So when he went back to free the Hebrews from Egypt, he understood the principles of Pharaoh. And as a result of that, he knew the approach and he knew how to free them. That is not a reality in terms of that actually happened. What the Creator is saying to us through that book is, you are Moses. You are the one who draws all of this out of people. And our desire was for racism to be exposed. And we drew the conversations that are prevalent now out of them. The statements that Kathy talked about a few minutes ago, we drew that out of them. We drew everything that was hidden out to the surface so we could see it, because there are people who has to be mistreated who have to be dogged out before they can accept that they are not European. Even though they see themselves every day, they think that they are on parity with Europeans or with white people. You're not on parity with white people in their mind. And so we are in the house of Pharaoh, and we have learned the ways of Pharaoh. History has taught us not just the history of being in this country, but the history of ourselves has shown us who we are. Now we understand that we are to be guided, we are to receive the wisdom of our ancestors so that we are able to navigate the pathway that we have chosen. And the ancestors are able to see what we cannot see. And they guide us, they protect us, and they grant us the wisdom to be able to see. There is nothing but the ancestors who showed me that there is a difference between Caucasians and Europeans. Huge difference. Huge difference. The ancestors has shown us how to draw all of these things out and how to put things in the macro that's going to penetrate the hearts of mankind. And when I say the hearts of mankind, I am not talking about European mindsets. I'm talking about the hearts of Caucasian as well as European mindsets, to change that mindset to one of loving kindness, to one of empathy, to one that's not so greedy until it has no qualms about watching people starve in order for them to be wealthier. We assimilated into a society that forced us to become like it. And this thing called integration was not something that happened in a vacuum. During the period when Martin Luther King was marching, and Stokely Carmichael and Huey Newton and people like that, who was actually us, and Imam Baraka, when they were saying, we want a plebiscite, the decision was made within the confines of politics that we are going to offer them integration, but it's going to be assimilation. And that's exactly what happened. The Black Wall Street in the Greenwood district of Oklahoma was burned. But what most people don't know, it was rebuilt to its original status. And what destroyed it was integration, which was actually assimilation is what destroyed it. So this plan that Kathy had mentioned, saying the quiet thing out loud, has been in operation from day one. And a part of that was pulling the church, the Christian church, into that, especially the African Christian church, the Black folks church was pulled into that. And the way it was pulled into that is, if you notice, everything that white people did in their churches in terms of programs or structures like gyms and family centers, etc., all of these things were duplicated by the African church. Even the messages that were preached were based upon the what are those books called? The ones where you go to get understanding of the scriptures. What you call those?
Commentaries.
Commentaries, yeah. They drew all their messages from commentaries that were written by racists, and all of those messages was geared toward assimilation and not integration. When you integrate systems, you do your due diligence, and when you integrate systems, you take parts and portions of both systems and they become one. When you assimilate, you learn all the ways of those who are in power. You have to follow the principles, the edicts that they have put out there for you to follow. This is the system that we currently function under. And it's not just a system in America. This is a global system of assimilation that has been forced upon people who don't look like Europeans or people who don't have a European ethnicity. So we are in a place where the world has never been. We have an opportunity that humanity has not seen before. And this opportunity that we have is to continuously put positivity in the macro. And by positivity, I mean spirituality in the macro, and not to hate anyone, not to dehumanize anyone, regardless of what they do. We cannot dehumanize them. We can talk about their objectionable personalities, but to dehumanize them is something we cannot possibly do, and say that we are Elohim, because Elohim creates in its image and likeness. So you cannot seek to create in your image and likeness and at the same time dehumanize anyone. It doesn't matter how much of a racist they are or how much of a liar they are. We cannot do that, because we know that there is a spark in every human on this earth. There is a spark of divinity in every human on this earth. There is a fire in some, but there's a spark in every human. And we must cultivate, that spark until it becomes a flame, until it becomes a raging fire. That's our responsibility. And we cannot abdicate our responsibility. We must, and George read a scripture yesterday, George and Philip read a scripture yesterday. And the simplicity of that scripture, it says that if you do what you're supposed to, in other words, if you reach out to humanity, I will protect you, says the Lord. And not only that, but when your soul gets to a place of drought, I will water it. So all it's saying is that when you get despondent, when you feel like there is no place to go, or there is nothing you can do to bring changes for the benefit of humanity, when your heart is torn to pieces because of what you're seeing, not only in Gaza, but what we have come through as a people, being skinned alive and being burned, a lot being castrated, women, the gynecologists experiment on our women. When we see all of this, we cannot be discouraged. Yes, it's heart-wrenching. Yes, it tears your heart to pieces. But we have to understand that when we get to that place to throw up our hands, or we feel like this is just not worth it, please know that it is. And the one who brought us into this earth is continuously reinvigorating us. We are an endless source of water. And sometimes we cannot see that we are endless source of water that refreshes those who are thirsting for change. We cannot see that all the time, but know that you are. You cannot see the blood flowing through your body, but you know it's there and you trust it to be there. You cannot see your heart, but you trust it to be. You cannot understand how your engine in your car works, but you expect it to crank. Why is it that we cannot expect our Creator to guide us, all the ancestors to guide us through this landmine, through the landmines of this life, so that we can get to a better place, not just for us, but for all of us, so that harmony can be the prevailing force in the earth. That comes when we disallow racist antics to have an effect on us. The one who is racist is the one who needs our help the most. And the help doesn't come by us labeling them. It comes by us loving them. I'm done.
Okay. Anyone, questions, comments?
I have a comment and a question. This is Evelyn. I feel that Donald Trump was the sober one at the parties and the dinners. That's why he was able to hear what was going on. And also, my question is the comment that what Kathy just talked about, and the comment that the lady made. My question to the family is: do you think that the Caucasian is afraid of what they've been doing to other people, or to the Africans? Are they afraid what they've done to people is coming back to them, and that's why they don't want all these immigrants, as we call them, to come here in America? That's my question.
Let's make that distinction, please. There are Caucasians who do not subscribe to that. But the European mindset does. So there are those with a European mindset who are afraid that what they did is going to come back on them. But also keep in mind that you can't say that it's just a Caucasian, because we talk about individuals. When you talk about mindset, you have people of African descent, people who came from the womb of an enslaved woman, who feel the same way about those people at the border, that we must have them assimilate into our society before they come in. So excuse me, the fear is a mindset as opposed to being a human principle. It's a mindset. And that mindset of fear it actually feeds itself, because it says that I must keep them in a certain position, otherwise they go do to me what I'm doing to them. And no matter what happens, that mindset is passed on from generation to generation. So it's a self-fulfilling fear that exists with them. So please keep in mind that there's a difference between the mindset of the European and Caucasians, because a Caucasian can have either mindset, and so can an African. Thank you.
Hey, Pastor. I have a question about, we talked about, Trump being more clearly kind of thing. What I wonder, though, is part of it for him was that, that filter of it's going to come back on me that you said lots of Caucasians feel, like that he doesn't even think that is, so there's no fear, because the other thing that's keeping them from saying is the fear, right? That it'll come back on me, that people see the truth. He's not afraid of that truth. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying I feel like he doesn't care, that we know this stuff or that he voices what we know has been said, but people won't fess up. Does that make sense?
It does, indeed it does. I don't think he has the capacity to care. And that's a good thing. Because if he had the capacity to care, he would cloak it, just like the rest of them have been doing all these years. He does not have a filter. And that's a good thing.
So it kind of points to sociopathy, right? Just kind of a...
I'm trying to be nice, aren't you?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm trying to be nice to him. Yes, it definitely is sociopath. He does not have filters. He does not have compassion. He does not have empathy for anyone at all. And we ought to be able to see that. We ought to be able to see that in his actions, in his words, in his desires. Think about it this way. And I'm talking purely in political terms, not spiritual. If he's elected and becomes a dictator, how long do you think Tim Scott would last? How many invitations do you think Tim Scott's going to get to the White House to talk to Trump?
9.
0. So what am I saying? He's just like any other sociopath. He knows how to play the game to get what he wants, but he doesn't have a filter. He has to say it because that makes him better than you. That gives him a sense of superiority because he has at his disposal the weapons of this country. There is not one African on the face of this earth who can do and say what Trump said and live. Not one. Do you think for a minute that Obama would be still breathing or be walking around free if he did 1/10 of what Trump did? Not going to happen. So he feels like he's protected. He feels like nothing can happen to him. And that's why he says that so freely. Biden is not fighting Trump because Trump is lying about what this country is about. Biden is fighting Trump because they don't want to lose control. What Trump is seeking to do has always been done. You don't elect a president. You choose the people that they put out there. You don't make a decision who's going to be out there. The ones who control the system are the ones who make that decision. And the ones who control the system are not in DC. The ones who control the systems are corporate owners, or corporate, CEOs. That's who control it. The Bezos of the world. That's who controls it. And the thing about it is this, no matter what he says in a negative way about any of them, they still support him because they know that he's going to do whatever it takes to increase their money and protect their interests.
I have a question, Pastor, when you're done.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, I'm sorry, my phone was muted. My apologies. My question is, I don't know if you said this earlier, are there only 2 types of mindset? The reason why I'm asking is because we were talking about earlier about the people at the border, how Africans, some people in America feel the same way as the Caucasian mindset or European mindset. But there's also Hispanic Americans who have taken on that mentality as well, looking at people who look just like them, and they're conducting themselves like the Europeans. So my question is, are there 2 mindsets or are there others?
Honestly, there are 2. One from the first people in the earth, and one from the last people in the earth. Those are 2 mindsets. There are no people in the earth who has ever done what has been done through the European mindset. No people. Why do I say that? 2 mindsets. You either the tree of life or the tree of good and evil. You either have a mindset of loving kindness or you don't. You have a mindset that you can express empathy for people or you don't. You are forgiving or you're not. This thing about I'm gonna try to forgive you. No. Either you do it or you don't. You understand what I'm saying, Myra?
I do.
So that when I say those mindsets, if you think about how things are structured, there is the way that the African and the European goes, that's the way the rest of the world goes. All the people in between are incidental. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's just the way it is. The biggest thing that Europeans do is to keep the African weak. And the biggest thing that the African desires to do is to touch the heart of the European. Because when you touch the heart of the European mindset, when you touch that heart, everything changes. The whole world changes. When you're able to influence that mindset to the extent that it begins to think in human terms, as opposed to in material greed, terms of greed and superiority, everything on the earth changes. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address that? Now there's a difference in culture. The Hispanic culture is different, but I'm talking about how people think. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So I'm talking about how people think, because thinking determines your actions. Questions, comments?
Because I'm still stuck on the difference between the European mindset and the Caucasian. I am still stuck on that. That's just okay.
Difference. There are Caucasian / white people who have empathy for other people, who will never embrace what's happening in Gaza. That means they don't think like, they don't have rather a complete mindset of the European. The European mindset is we are superior to everyone, and we own everything on this earth, and all that you don't readily give up to us, we will kill you and take it. That's the European mindset. All Caucasians don't think like that. There are Caucasians who have an African mindset of empathy, love, and kindness. They want to see the world in harmony. Does that make sense to you, Evelyn?
It does. So with the European, I look at it as a universal thing.
No, European mindset is a universal thing, or it is a universal thing.
Okay.
But
yeah. And go ahead.
The Caucasian is not. See, what we have done, we've talked all these years about the African is a concept and the European is a concept, have we not?
Yes.
Okay. So if the European and the African are concepts, then what are those concepts? The European concept is to take everything from anybody they choose, and if they don't freely give it up, then they take it by force, even if they have to kill them. What that dude's name? What's his name? I got his book open somewhere. In Belgium, the king who killed 8 million people or 11 million people in Africa because they wanted to control the territory. There's a mindset that says we must forgive them. They don't know what they're doing, so we forgive them. Those are the mindsets that govern humanity. This is different than culture. This is how people think. And all all Caucasians don't think like that. They don't subscribe to that kind of mindset. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
It was King Leopold, I think.
Yeah, Leopold. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
One of something we visited before and maybe talk about again at some point is life and death. I mean, the energy that is created or is taken away when people are murdered. What does that do to the earth? What does that do to life as we know it? You have some that embrace life and some it means nothing. And just to hear somebody that would kill millions of people for greed, the reward, I guess, for the earth comes through forgiveness. But that depending on what day you say that, is a hard pill to swallow for me. But I do embrace what you're saying. I do. I'm not trying to be difficult here. Sometimes you know.
I think, Ron, I think if what happened to the story about Jesus on the cross, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that telling us? Jesus was being crucified. And he said, Father, forgive them. What is that telling us? No matter what kind of agony you're going through, no matter what has been done to you or is being done to you, whether it is physical torture or mental torture, forgiveness is always in order. On that cross, the suffering that Jesus was going through, I think it's more of a story to us, not us on this, just us in this group, but us as a people worldwide, all people on earth. I think it's a message more than it is something to be revered in terms of worship. I think the greater message is, in order to release yourself, you have to forgive. And I think the example of the torture on that cross, it speaks volumes about the pain that we go through, but yet forgiveness is always there, must be always there. If it's not, then vengeance is there. And vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So how can we be both Yahweh and be unforgiving? So to me, the vengeance is what we are doing now. Forgiving and making every effort to understand how we can bring harmony into the earth. To me, that's the best kind of vengeance that you can wreak on anyone. Why? Because if you do vengeance based on this material world, you're going to create more chaos. But if you do spiritual vengeance by bringing them or by forgiving them and changing their heart, then everyone benefits from it. Because we have seen killing them doesn't change anything. You cannot wage a physical warfare. Neither can you expect to be nonviolent and the government go change in your favor. That's not going to happen. We tried all of those things. All of them. Gabriel Prosser, I believe it is, who was in Virginia, who had an uprising, and when they caught them, every they lined the streets with their head. They severed their heads and put them on a pole, and they lined the streets with those heads so that everyone who came through would see what happens to you if you revolt. And he was disemboweled, and his fingers were cut off. All these things were done to him while he was still living. Yet we must forget why, because there is no value in making an effort to bring righteousness into the land by killing people. There's no value in it. So we have to learn to do that.
I don't mean that at all. In fact, just the opposite. I'm just saying that sometimes, especially when you're a child, you're in an immature way, some things happen to you that hurt you, and you don't understand that it's for your betterment. And it's going to reward you later in life. You may not see it for 10 years, 20 years, but one day you will see it and you will appreciate. I remember the day I did this, and this is what happened to me, and I see it now. And I think death is that way. I think there's some part of that that at least I have not seen yet, that I'm hoping to be here in the earth when I see the reward for it. That's all I'm saying. There's a part of it that in my immaturity as that child, I still don't quite see it, and I want to see it, because too much of it goes on for it not to bring betterment into the world. That's all I'm saying.
And I would tell you up front, my nature, my attitude was a sheer violence. I was a Pan-Africanist nationalist. I was one of the leading people who wanted to establish a plebiscite, because I didn't want nothing to do with white folks, period. If I wanted to find a good white person, I'd go to the cemetery. That's how I felt. The only good ones are dead, and they're good because they're dead, because they can't do me any harm. I felt like that. Forgiving them, no. That was not it. That was not any place in me to forgive them. However, at that moment, I was a Pan-Africanist nationalist with a European mindset. And the more of a spirituality that I began to embrace, and it took some years, the more I became an agent of forgiveness. So I'm not dismissing how difficult it is at all. But I'm not going to, lie about or cover up how I felt as versus how I feel now and how I got to this place where I am now. My mindset was European, which means that I was actually in the house of Pharaoh doing what Pharaoh was doing to me. So both of us were in the ditch together, as opposed to being in a place of elevation together, seeking to bring humanity to a place of order. Makes sense? They can't see you shaking your head.
It makes sense.
I just think we need to be honest with ourselves. That's all.
And I couldn't agree more. I do.
I'm sorry, Ron. I just saw Nick take mute off. That's all.
Yeah, and not to interrupt, I wanted to say something about forgiveness, I think, because I feel like I wanted to help make that clearer. Forgiveness is in no way condoning anybody's actions.
Yeah.
It is in no way, yeah,
Absolutely.
it is in no way saying it's okay for you to do what you're gonna do. Forgiveness is rather on a spiritual level about what essentially we are doing to ourselves, in terms of recreating that same trauma, hurt, and pain, etc., on an internal level for ourselves as a result of holding on to anger, fear, or whatever. It is a stopping of a feedback cycle within.
What?
It is a stopping of a feedback cycle with, internally that sort of perpetuates a.
I'm gonna get off the phone.
Oh, Pastor Richard, we can still hear you on the phone. But it's a learning to loosen or untangle a knot within. And it is a essentially something that unbinds you from the one you're forgiving, or whatever it is you're forgiving. It is a way of essentially cutting a karmic tie with the one who has done wrong to you.
Excuse
that-
me 1 second.
Oh, sure.
Okay, I have to step away for a second, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, that
Yeah.
you
You just said
continue,
they had
Phil.
to step away for a second.
No, you
Okay.
continue.
Well, yeah, all I really wanted to say was exactly that. Forgiveness is not condoning anybody else's action. It is severing a tie that exists between you and the one you're forgiving, that is perpetuated by our own recreation of whatever it is that we're dealing with, the frustration, pain, etc. And that is done because the truth is all of us are one, and all of us are connected and the same, well, part of the same unity of the Creator. So in the example of when Jesus on the cross says, "Forgive them, for they do not do not know what they do." To be able to forgive somebody who is even torturing you is, again, in no way any endorsement of what they're doing. It is only the releasing of the spiritual bind or tie between you and that one that you are forgiving, within the awareness that you are ultimately connected. And the releasing of the tie, the forgiveness, is sort of it makes it easier for the overall work, spiritually speaking, that is being done for all of us and by all of us to be completed. It's like one half of you forgiving someone is like one half of the work being done, in a sense. It's one half of the burden being lifted. And I think there's more to it than that, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, just picking up on what Nick was saying. And it allows you to step away, be free, and move forward. I think of the people in northern, I think it's Uganda. I always get Ghana and Uganda mixed up. And when they've been discussed, when they've had discussions about the Christian, whatever it is, Liberation Army that's up there brutalizing people, they don't want revenge. They just want it to be over, so they can think forward in the future and rebuild their life. and I'm sitting here thinking a slightly different feeling of the expression vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I think we think of that, maybe it's me, but we think of that traditionally in a fairly harsh way, meaning I'll get even for you. But I think what it really is the Creator saying, I can handle all that. Let me have it. You be free of this so that you can go on and live your life. It's maybe a subtle difference, but it's significant, I think. Anyway.
I can see that, Richard.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
good morning. One of the things I like to add is, how does forgiveness come? You never know how forgiveness comes. My dearest friend, Rocksteady, 65, 66, went in the military. Right after the military, got in trucking. His grandchild or his grandchildren, he's able to forgive himself. Because when you out here over road on this truck, you ain't at everybody's birthday party. You don't teach your children how to drive. You don't teach your children. You ain't at the PTO meetings. And sometimes out of sight don't necessarily mean you out of mind. So his grandchildren, the activity that he has with his grandchildren now gives him forgiveness toward himself, beating himself up. And beating himself up may not be the proper word. So forgiveness come in many different avenues. And one thing about grandchildren with grandparents, if the grandparents are 72 years old, when that grandchild hit this here earth, they'll get real young. And any mistake that the grandparent did as a parent, they won't do with that grandchild. Hey, I shouldn't have been so hard on my son. And he will not be hard on any of his grandchildren. All the same thing, and all mistakes out here are not done by males. Grandmothers, oh, I shouldn't have did that. I was wrong. They don't make the same mistake. So forgiveness come in many different avenues. Sammy the Bull, he sequenced the hit on Paul Castellano at the steakhouse in New York. He got a biracial grandchild. Say something about his biracial. He loved that child. And he loved the participants who gave him that grandchild. So forgiveness come in many different forms. Forgiveness may not come from the person that did you wrong. It may come from their friend A. So forgiveness just it come in many different arenas, and it come in many different ways. It just may not come the way you want it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, somebody, Nick, Ron, will y'all go? Because you were talking, so are you going to respond to that?
I appreciate everybody's response, and everybody pretty much said the same things, or a lot of the same things, I'll say. I really, there's something magical about forgiveness that I still have a need to embrace. And that's why, you will see, but if I'm kind of weak on something, you'll see me revisit it, and it kind of reflects on sometimes my questions and what we talk about. And I think what I've heard tonight, I wouldn't mind going back and looking at it again. But it is an eye opener, and I although we've talked about this hundreds of times, seems like it must be a very, very, very powerful thing, and maybe the most powerful thing we can ever discuss. So I hear what you said. I embrace it, and and I couldn't agree more. I just sometimes don't always hear things or accept things the way I should, I suppose, and it becomes difficult. But I guess I'm looking at it too, that somebody else may on this phone may have had to grappling with the same things that I am. So maybe on that regard, the discussion is very much worthwhile.
Ron, this is Barbara.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I just wanted to comment on what you just said about there's something magical about forgiveness. The thing for me is that forgiveness freeing. It's more about freeing myself from bondage of what I've been thinking or what I have done or what I am potentially capable of doing in a negative way. And thereby, in freeing myself, I'm freeing someone else, whoever it is that I allow to have me in bondage because of the way I think about them or the way I feel about them. And so the magical part of it to me is in forgiveness, I free both myself and the other person or the other idea, the other concept, because that other idea, person, concept is me. So the magical thing is that by forgiving, I set me free.
Yeah.
By setting my other free, I set me free. Thanks.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that,
Okay.
go ahead, Richard.
Well, it's just a little more. I think there's another aspect that's seemingly small but important and significant too. You also lay at the feet of I don't know how to express it exactly, put down a kind of gauntlet, not a gauntlet, because that sounds provocative, but you lay at the feet of the situation or the other persons involved the opportunity for them to pick that up and find a way to free themselves. You can't necessarily do it for them, but you've given, you know what I'm saying? It's more than just what it does for you.
It is.
You're giving them the opportunity to pick that up and benefit from that too. And I think that's significant. And maybe your life's going to be involved with theirs in some way in that aspect. So
I agree with you, Richard, and I think though the you more than it just for you, I think the you is the key. At least that's the part I've been missing, I think, and I'm starting to see it. The you, we talk about this. I changed the world by changing me. So I can't walk up to and give Donald Trump a letter and tell him how I think he should do this or that. I can't sit down and invite Nikki Haley to our Bible study and think it's going to, but I change me, and I trust the spirituality and the energy that I am to affect the universe. So if I don't forgive, I suppose I see it as a snare that I stop not stop, but I slow up that frequency to make changes. And so the me is not me, the me is the us that's affected. And that's the part for whatever reason, I guess I continue to miss, but just from listening to what everybody's saying, it does make sense. So that's pretty much what I want to.
well, I think Ron too, nobody's saying it's easy.
Oh yeah.
You know? And maybe that's part of the importance of it. Things that are easier, do they really change you? So it could take time. So,
Yeah.
Forgiveness. The scripture understanding of forgiveness is restoration. And when Jesus was asked, how many times shall I forgive one? That was your friend. I cannot forgive Ron for something that Richard did. Richard has to do that. I can express my empathy towards Ron for what happened to him and tell Ron that that's not who Richard really is. That's an anomaly. But that does not mean that I can forgive Ron for what Richard did. Now, when Richard forgives Ron, when Ron forgives Richard, what's happening is that's restoration on both parts. It is at the feet, as Richard said, at his feet to make a decision whether he's going to accept that and be restored by it. But whether Richard accepts it or not, if Ron forgives, then Ron is restored. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So forgiveness, the spiritual understanding of forgiveness is for restoration, and regardless of what we think. For example, all of Donald Trump's life, he's been the same way. So what does he have to be restored to if he's been the same way all his life? He to what was intended from the beginning, and that was for all men to be in harmony. Does that make sense? That's what forgiveness is about. Restoration. So he can be restored. Now the question is, I have made every effort to restore him. The question is whether or not he wants to be restored. Whether he's going to accept it, pick it up, make changes, etc. That's not incumbent on me. But there are no intermediaries. When the Southern Baptists met in Texas and they issued a forgiveness from them for their part in slavery, it was not them forgiving that saying, my daddy did this, so I'm gonna forgive for my daddy. No, it was talking about the institution. The part that the institution played in slavery is what they were expressing forgiveness for. Now, of course, they had to rescind it because the people back home got upset with it. The deacons did, but they were doing it on behalf of the institution. If a president in this country says, we're asking for forgiveness for what we did to you during your period in this country. We understand that we forced you here and we mistreated you. We seek your forgiveness for that. That's asking for forgiveness because for institutional racism, not an individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So forgiveness based upon institution and individuals are two different methods of forgiveness, two different things, rather, approaches to forgiveness. Now, I agree wholeheartedly that in the beginnings, forgiveness is not easy. The hardest thing for me to do was my upbringing intersected with white people, some of whom treated me ruthlessly. And I saw what they were doing to other people, and it was difficult for me to even hold in my mind the thought of forgiving them. But as I said earlier, the more I understood about spirituality, the easier it became for me to do that. And now I am at a place where I don't have to think about forgiving you. It is not something that I have to consider or ponder. I can forgive you just as easily as I can pour a hair out of milk. Why? Because I have grown to a place where I understand the power of forgiveness. I've grown to a place where I understand the necessity of forgiveness. Not just for me, but for both parties. I understand that. And that force or that understanding has brought me to this place where forgiveness is not difficult for me at all. And I would venture to say that all of us at some point should be at that place where you don't have to think about forgiving. You just do it because that's who you are. If you really think about the creator of us all, if the creator of us all may have to make some decision about, well, let me think about whether I'm gonna forgive James or not. Maybe I'll do it next week. I don't know. What would happen to me? What would I go through? So we are, the way I see it is that the less you are tied to this earth in terms of societal norms, the less you are tied to it, the easier it is to forgive. In this world, but not of this world, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Because we are taught that we are to defend ourselves no matter what. We are taught that you don't let anybody say anything about you. You go after them. We have to get past that. Now, am I saying you should not defend yourself? No, I'm not. Am I saying that you should not defend your family? No, I'm not. If you want to have a bad day, come in here and mess with my family. You're going to have a real bad day. So that has nothing to do with that at all. I'm not the pacifist. I'm not, that's not who I am. But I am the person who have no problem forgiving you. And when you think about forgiveness, if you want to know, and I'm not talking to Richard and Nick and Ron, I'm talking to all of us. If you want to know whether or not you are in a mindset of forgiveness, then ask yourself this. If someone were to rape my daughter, could I forgive them? If someone were to murder my wife or my mom, could I forgive them? Because forgiveness does not come with caveats. Either you do it or you don't. And sometimes that is the difficulty that people have with their approach to forgiveness. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I think what you're saying with that also is, that's why we say it in such a way that it sounds like it's easy, but you may never totally get there. And the only truth is, if you can, you have to live with what that leaves for you to deal with. But maybe you can, but you're not necessarily going to get there. Sometimes I think we say these things and they kind of roll off the tongue a little easily, and it's like, okay, we can all be that way. Well, I mean, there's some seriously brutal acts that man is capable of, and if you're unfortunate enough to be witness to them, if not directly involved, yeah, it's not about being easy or whatever. It's just understand, I guess you could say, the consequences, what comes with being bound or tied to that. And that's what you have to work your way through, and others can maybe help you do it. But it's not something everybody on this phone could be at a different place and a different capability when it comes to the same thing that could happen. But just to understand what it can do to you, how it can bind you, etc. And also the other person. Because if that other person's going to feel any guilt, they're going to go off and do more off-center bad, I don't know if bad's the right word, things, because what does guilt do? So, you know.
Ron, you muted.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Richard and Pastor and Nick and everybody, Barbara, George, everybody who spoke on this. This is powerful. This has been a good day, and might be a good place to pause and resume tomorrow. Any final thoughts, or anybody have anything that you want to say before we leave? There is one thing. There's something that I shared with Pastor the other day that I saw that really kind of shook me a little bit. I was looking at something on the news that was talking about the volcanoes, active volcanoes. And one of the feeds were saying there was a volcano just went off last week in Iceland. And it's the second one that has done so, I guess, within is many months. When I looked at that, they started talking about it, and she said something. She said there are over 100 active volcanoes worldwide, and I got my attention, and I thought, wow, how come that's not a big deal? How come we're not hearing more about that? And that's being hushed up. Where is it? What country does that have something to do with it? That's why we're not talking about it. And sure enough, I researched it and looked at where some of them are anyway. But the question that when I read it and looked at that is, I thought, why is the earth so angry? What is going on? You look at the unrest, you look at the wars and all the stuff that's happening, the chaos that is happening. But after I thought about it for a while, as I was saying to Pastor, my conclusion is this. It is not so much that the world is angry. What we're seeing is the world is getting over an illness. It is vomiting up, it is throwing up all the chaos. It is throwing up all the violence. It is throwing up all the confusion, all the hatred. The world is repairing itself. And we are seeing that before our eyes, and it looks chaotic. It looks like a part of all the chaos that we've seen around us, but the world is repairing the breach. And I think that is part of what takes place on this phone. And I think that's why I had to see it, so that we can kind of put things in perspective. So I hope that's, leave us on something, in a good place with that. And if anybody has seen that or want to talk about it, if you have a quick comment on it, please feel free.
Well, I think, Ron, just a quick one, and then I know we want to go. Why the world? Are you suggesting that you thought the world sought revenge? It doesn't do that.
No, not revenge at all.
No, I'm just saying it will always heal itself, just like we're able to do. The question is whether we see that and we can do that, and whether we make it so difficult for how the world has to heal itself that life becomes very, very difficult for us as a species. You know what I mean? But it's sort of like the world will go on. But it's not all those jokes about it's trying to cast off the virus that is the human race. That's just sort of a cynical joke. No, it operates under certain principles and understandings, and it's going to do what it has to do. So, and besides, you can have 100 active volcanoes and they're not destroying things, right? They could just be releasing pressure. So anyway, maybe that's a metaphor for something too. I don't know. Wrong time of the discussion to bring that up, maybe. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll leave it there, and hopefully if you have any thoughts and questions, as always, please write them down or send a text or something, and we will address them on tomorrow, or whenever something we need to look up, we'll look it up and address it as quickly as we can, okay? A great discussion. Thank you, everyone. It's still cold out there, so be careful if you have to leave the house, and have a great day and a great week, and see you tomorrow, okay?
Does not know what cold is.
Who doesn't? It's cold down here, but if I told you the temperature, you'd laugh at me.
No, that's like how when rich people say like it's